Welcome to the Soul Health Mentor podcast with 𝘂𝗿𝗄𝗃. Learn how to move your awareness out of your mind and into your heart so you can embody your divinity, experience joyous peace of mind, and create your most vibrant life by opening to receive your soul's sacred medicine.
Hello, beautiful soul. Hello, strong heart. Hello, brilliant listener. In this week's Soul Health Mentor podcast, I have had the pleasure to interview urban farmer Greg Peterson on how he became an urban farmer and how he knew at age 8 what he was here for. Yet, life took him to where he is today in a roundabout way. What I really loved about talking to Greg is that I was able to ask him all these questions that I had when it comes to gardening. Because a secret heart's wish of mine is to start gardening, to start growing plants, herbs, vegetables, fruits, but really feeling quite overwhelmed and not knowing where to start. So he was really patient with me and he answered all my questions and it felt really good. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Greg.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Soul Health Mentor. I am really very grateful today to be talking to Farmer Greg, and there is a personal reason behind that. So as you know, I'm originally from Germany and have been living in the States for 8 years now. And when I moved back to the States, my husband moved back to the States and I came with my husband, that I was very culture shocked, and I was also very food shocked. I was eating food and it wasn't tasting like I'm used to, and it wasn't filling my body with the nutrients that I'm used to, and I just couldn't find any answers. So I'm very grateful and excited to be able to ask those questions. Hello, Greg. How are you today?
Fantastic. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I am so looking forward to asking you all the questions that have been on my heart for the longest time. And the first question, though, how did you become Farmer Greg?
Well, it was, and I call it a gift and a curse. I think it was gifted at a very young age with me. I was fascinated prior to 10 years old with fish aquariums. And so by the time I was 9 or 10 years old, I had my first fish aquarium. I think I bought it with money that I earned walking dogs. And then I got a paper route and I had more money so I could get a bigger fish aquarium. And before long, I was looking at the whole process of how fish got raised for food for people to eat. And sometime in the 8th grade, I wrote a paper on how we were overfishing the oceans. This was 1974.
Wow.
And
wow.
Yeah. And fast forward a couple of years to 1981, I was participating in the Arizona Aquaculture Association. I know it sounds funny growing fish in the desert, but there were fish farms in the desert, and we went and visited one of the fish farms in the desert. And when you raise fish, I'm pretty much a vegetarian now, but when you raise fish, when you harvest the fish and cut the meat off of the fish, you have about 30% meat and about 70% waste product that isn't consumed by humans, and they were actually throwing that away. So in 1981, I was 21 years old, and I was looking at that process thinking, oh my gosh, there's got to be a better way. So I designed on paper, I still have these documents, I designed on paper what we would now call a regenerative fish farm. This was a fish farm where everything got used and nothing was wasted. Then if we transform or transfer ourselves 10 years into the future, in 1991, I'd spent the last prior decade, really looking at our food system just from afar and reading news accounts. Remember, this is pre-internet. So, there wasn't a lot of information. But a few things happened for me in 1991 and I was 30 years old, that really transformed my life.
What I find really fascinating is that, because the message of Soul Health Mentor is out of your mind and into your heart, to really come into that space of what I call divine mind, which is neutral. It's the capacity to understand and act. And if you think about intuition, it is also the capacity to understand and act. And but you don't know why you know. And you knew at 8 years, but you didn't know why you knew, right?
Exactly.
And
I think to a certain extent, even at 40, I didn't know, but I knew that this was what I was supposed to be doing, but I didn't know why.
yes.
Maybe at 30.
And it is something that is the capacity of the heart and the capacity of intuition to just act on the things but you don't know why you know. So I am very interested to learn how you got here, and it took time, and it sounds like it happened in stages, and it also sounded like the rational mind was going, no, I don't want to do that. Why should I do that? But the intuition was saying something different. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. And actually, interesting you should say it that way. The rational mind in my family was my mom and dad's conversation. And so I started my first business when I was 15 years old. I used to clean, service, and build fish ponds in Phoenix. And I did that as part of that, I created backyard fish ponds for people, for them to grow their own food.
Yeah.
And I was doing that at like 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. And by the time I was 30, 1991, I wasn't making lots of money. I was happy. And I was doing what I wanted to be doing in the world around all of this. And I had a lot of pushback from my parents about going out and getting a real job. And so there was that dichotomy of, do I buy into their conversation, or do I stay true to my heart?
Yes.
And during that period of time, I actually tried to get away from this conversation, but it kept pulling me back. From about 1986 to about 2004, I actually was in technology. I had multiple technology companies that I ran, but I never got far away from gardening.
That was always part of your life, gardening.
Exactly. Yeah, gardening. And in 1989, I bought the home where I lived for 32 years in Phoenix, and it became the Urban Farm. The little ebook on the front page of my website talks about how it became an environmental showcase home in Phoenix. And that started in 1989 while I was working in technology. But 91 was a powerful year for me. I learned a lot. And going to your question of not knowing what I don't know, but being aware that I don't know what I don't know. Because, a 30-year-old could be, well, I know everything in the world. And I still, at 60 years old, it's like, I've got a curious mind. I just moved 1,900 miles from Phoenix, Arizona, which is in the middle of a desert, to Asheville, North Carolina, which is in the middle of a very old growth forest.
Yes.
It's a way different place to live. And I'm engaging with people here about the differences, because I don't know what that plant is outside my window. If I was sitting in Phoenix, I could tell you exactly what it is. So making a space to have it be okay that you don't know.
And
Is really,
even though you don't know, it's okay to follow your heart.
exactly. And so coming out of many decades of my parents saying to me, Greg, when are you going to get a real job? And me saying, you know what, a real job in your world isn't what I want to be doing. What I want to be doing is what's in my heart. And it always led me back to food and teaching people about food. And
Yes.
the pivotal year of my life was halfway through my life. I'm 61 now. This was when I was 30. In 1991, 4 things happened. I read a book called 𝘂𝗿𝗄𝗍 by Daniel Quinn. You'll either love it or you'll hate it. Either way, it will change your life and how you look at food forever. It's a conversation between a gorilla and a man, and the gorilla is the teacher, and it outlines in a fiction book the very real way that we as humans over the past 10,000 years have gone away from nature and away from local food.
Yes, that's the problem, isn't it?
It is. The second thing that happened in 1991 is I discovered something called permaculture. Permaculture is, I like to define it as the art and science of working with nature. How do we work in the flow of nature rather than against nature? Because we human beings think we know how to do it better than nature, right?
So permaculture is working with nature.
Yes.
And is that what you did in your home in Arizona? You created a garden. You call it a food forest, don't you?
Yes, I do.
So could you tell us more about, so there's 2 questions that I have.
Hold on, before we go there, there's two more important things that I want to share with you about 1991. And don't forget your question. The third thing that happened for me, so I read 𝘂𝗿𝗄𝗍. I learned about permaculture. The third thing that happened for me was I did a landmark education workshop called the Advanced Course, where they have you look into your heart and create your vision for your life. And I created my vision, which I still do every single day, 31 years later.
That's amazing.
I am the person on the planet responsible for transforming our global food system.
Powerful.
It is.
Powerful.
It is.
Powerful.
So now 91 is, we're not done yet. A friend of mine goes to the South Pacific on a sailboat in 1991. Now, remember, I read 𝘂𝗿𝗄𝗍 by Daniel Quinn, where he talks about 5,000 years ago, food used to be free.
Oh.
And then we locked up the food. This friend of mine goes to the South Pacific and they anchor at an island looking for a grocery store, and the people just look at them and say, go pick your own. And he comes back to Phoenix and he shares it with me, and it hits me like a ton of bricks. There are still places on the planet where food is free.
Yes.
And there's this massive amount of abundance that can come out of gardens and growing food, because nature knows no boundaries about abundance.
It is true. When you have a garden, you have to give it to you have to give so much to your neighbors, because the things go bad if you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that was really the shift point of my life. It was 1991. I was 30 years old, and it's like, it hit me like a freight train, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
That is a great story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it gives me context and the listener context to why you're doing what you're doing. And now I would love to be educated by you as a European coming to the States and just kind of feeling in my body that there's so many toxins. I could feel it, but I didn't know what hit me. I also didn't understand why the food that I'm buying in the supermarket doesn't taste like anything. Could you explain the US food system to me and to our listeners in the most simplest of ways, if possible?
In the next 3 minutes, right?
Yes.
This is a 2-year conversation, by the way. It started in after World War II. And after World War II, this thing called the Green Revolution happened. And it's not the green that we talk about today. It's the growing a food revolution, they had all of these chemicals that were left over from making bombs.
Oh boy.
And they didn't know what to do with them. So they turned them into fertilizer. And this primarily nitrogen-based fertilizer made everything green and made it grow like mad. And so we have a history, we have a 70-year history in this country of putting massive amounts of chemicals into the land to make food grow.
Wow.
So part of what you're getting in this country is highly chemicalized, polluted food. In fact, I got an email from a listener recently that here it is. Right now is what's happening. I was speechless with this email that I got from this listener. And do you know what glyphosate is?
I've heard of it, yes,
Yeah,
but I don't know what it is.
Glyphosate is Roundup. Roundup is glyphosate. Glyphosate is a chemical that kills weeds.
Yeah.
And the way that it kills weeds is that it and this isn't a science answer here. This is me paraphrasing, but basically it destroys the cell walls of the plants that are weeds.
Wow.
And then they need more chemicals to make the plants that we are growing not susceptible to glyphosate. So the email that I get from this listener was, Greg, tell me about glyphosate in rainwater.
Wow. And what does that mean?
And well, good question. Basically, glyphosate is a chemical to kill weeds. And my mind couldn't wrap how this chemical evaporates, because when water evaporates, it leaves everything behind. It leaves the salts behind, it leaves everything behind. So I reached out to my good friend Jeffrey at IRC, Jeffrey Smith. He's the director of a company that, a nonprofit that works on getting glyphosate out of this country. And we're going to do a podcast. I'm going to get myself educated on how is glyphosate in rainwater. And the baffling piece for me was, how does this chemical end up in the rainwater when rain comes from evaporated water on the planet? And it's when water evaporates, it's not supposed to pick up stuff and put it in the air. So that's a piece of our challenge.
You gave me the answer, though, for me feeling that all these chemicals are entering into my body. I could just sense it.
Yeah.
Because that is also out of your mind and into your heart. Wisdom activates your intuition, which activates your connection to your body and your intuitive senses.
Yeah.
And we are so denatured. And now it makes sense what you shared. If I was eating polluted food.
Yeah.
And I'm still eating polluted food.
Yeah. I only eat organic.
So what can we do if we wanted to?
So let's hold on. There's another side of this coin that I don't want to miss. Because you said you're eating chemicalized food, but the other piece is you're eating food that didn't ripen on the plant. And there's this whole chemical reaction that goes into food when it ripens on the plant that makes it more nutritious and more tasty for you. And a lot of time what happens is that food is picked before it's ripe. And it is shipped 100, 1,000, 4,000 miles. And as it's being shipped, two things are happening. The amount of nutrition that was in it is declining. And then there's a huge environmental impact, which we won't even go into, of shipping food that far. So basically, if you buy a tomato or a peach at a grocery store and it was shipped 1,000 miles, it had to be picked before it was ripe. And so you're getting that tomato in the grocery store, it ripened along the way, but it didn't ripen on the plant. It ripened off the plant, so it didn't have the same chemical reactions going into it that made it taste good. I picked a tomato off of one of my tomato plants yesterday. It tasted like candy.
Yes, I see what you're saying now.
Sweet and flavorful. So the two big things that you got going on with our food system, because of the taste that you're talking about, is the amount of chemicals that are in it, number one, and number two, that it was picked unripe. And I tell people this all the time: plant yourself a peach tree in your yard, grow yourself a peach, eat that peach at its peak of ripeness off of the tree, and you will never buy a store-bought peach again.
So now I understand it. It's these foods filled with chemicals, and the origin, the history was the war and leftover chemicals. And now I'm eating foods full of chemicals, but also eating food that was actually not ripe when it was picked and didn't have the chance to develop the flavor that it can develop when it's ripening on the plant. And so it really does sound like having your own garden is the way to go. And you have done it in your home in Arizona, and our listeners can actually find that ebook. Would you tell us how we can find it?
Yeah, so if you go to 𝗂𝗿𝗯𝗿.org, that's my website, and it'll just pop up on the front page of the website and say, hey, you want to download this free ebook? And it's the story of how my 1/3 of an acre food forest, oh, you asked me about a food forest, 1/3 of an acre food forest happened in Phoenix, Arizona.
And would you say it is doable for beginners like me and my husband, or maybe beginners like the listeners?
Absolutely.
And how, this is me now asking you as a beginner, how would one start? Sometimes it's just the starting that is overwhelming the mind.
Yeah. The first thing that I tell people to do is, the most expensive thing to buy in the grocery store are herbs, and they're the easiest thing to grow. You can literally grow a basil plant on your windowsill in your house.
Yes.
I've done it before. And so grow something and be patient with yourself. I promise you that I've killed more plants than any of your listeners. I've been growing food for 45 years. I don't kill them on purpose, but it happens, and it's okay. It's okay that it happens.
You get better with practice, right?
Yeah. I have a podcast, 𝗂𝗿𝗯𝗿 Podcast, and one of the questions that I asked my guests is, tell me about a time you failed and what you learned from that failure. And that is to show people that everybody fails around gardening. Everybody fails, and it's okay. And that's how we learn.
So we've learned so much from you already. We've learned how you just always knew that you were meant to do what you do today. You knew that at 8 years young, which is such a beautiful story. And it's so important to hear, because most of us knew. It's just we get deconditioned, and that was the story of your parents, the deconditioning. No, get a real job, whatever. Right. And we learned about the food system, and now I got an answer to what I was just feeling intuitively in my body. I kept asking, what is wrong with this place? That was my internal, what is wrong with this place? Yeah. You've answered where we can start, what we can do. We can go to your website, download your ebook, start with a herb garden, just start. It's just that start. First step, just start. Yep. Why do you call what you did in your home in Arizona, why do you call it a food forest?
Well, let's go back to 1991 and that friend of mine that went to the South Pacific and, just go pick your own in the forest.
Mm.
And building food forests is a process of looking at how a forest works and then starting to replicate that. And it's never made sense to me that people would actually plant something in their yard, in their business complex, in their office building, at the apartment complex. It's never made sense to me that people would plant things that they would have to nurture and take care of that wouldn't give you anything.
I see what you're saying.
So what if, and I'm not just talking about food, you want to plant flowers and bring things to bring in beneficial insects, and there's other things to do. In my house in Phoenix, there was an ash tree in the backyard. Now the ash tree didn't make any food, but it gave me bushels of leaves in the fall that became my compost, that built the soil on my property. So building a food forest is looking at nature and how nature builds a forest and doing the same thing in your yard with food.
I love that explanation. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something that you used the leaves to build your soil. What does that mean? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So in a forest, nobody goes in and rakes up the leaves.
True.
And puts them in plastic bags and sends them off to a landfill to live in that plastic bag forever.
Mm.
In the forest, the leaves fall, the branches fall, a deer comes along and leaves some poop behind. And what happens over time is you get this thick, rich layer of amazing soil that grows things.
Mm-hmm.
So in permaculture, we look at natural systems and how these natural systems work. And a forest is a natural system that works. So if we look at a forest to see how it works, we can apply those same natural principles to our yard. Like, don't throw away those leaves. They make great mulch for next year, which in 2 years, that mulch will become soil. One of the best composts out there is leaf mulch compost. Leaves that fall down and, become compost for the next year.
Yeah, I love that. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
And we live in hot, sticky Southwest Georgia, where it gets really, really hot, and we don't water our grass because we are like, no, that's just, let it do its thing. It's silly.
Exactly.
But we do have some beautiful flowers out, and we have some plants out, which the poor things, they need water every day. Do you have a tip in regards to watering your garden?
We have a whole series of classes that we give on watering your garden. And I've been growing food since 1976. I planted my first garden in 1976. And so I've experimented with many different things, including many different ways to water. And about 10, 12 years ago, one of my mentors says, Greg, do you know about drip tape?
It's called drip tape?
Drip tape.
Oh.
It is a product that is being used on farms, medium-sized and even some large farms, to make them more water efficient. And the way that this drip tape works is you hook it up to your hose, and there's a process to do that. You hook it up to their hose, and everything in that drip tape system has to pressurize before it starts dripping. The problem with a lot of backyard irrigation systems is that they don't pressurize equally. So the plants at the beginning of the system get more water than the plants at the end of the system.
Mhm.
And this particular stuff called drip tape fixes that. And it's like Tinker Toys. You remember Tinker Toys?
This might be a cultural thing where I don't
That might be a
remember
cultural thing.
because
That's okay.
I grew up in Germany.
Tinker Toys are these little logs that we just assembled them in a very logical engineering way, and they made toys for us.
Uh-huh.
And putting together drip tape is just doing that exact same thing. You put it together in a very logical way that then waters your entire garden.
So you could set it up once you start a vegetable garden, you could set it up to be watering your vegetable garden as well?
Automatically. Yep, exactly.
Ah, that makes everything so much easier.
It does.
Yes.
It does. Even living here at my new place, I'm hand watering things. And it's like, oh, hold on. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. I need to go out and hand water my plants in the pots on the patio.
Mm-hmm.
And, having a automated system helps with that so much.
Yes, thank you. I've learned so much from you. I'm going to just summarize just to make sure that I remember it, and also for our listeners, because I'm personally very interested. My husband and I have been talking about what I love that you said, how you said, start with a herb garden. We literally started there. We just planted, and my husband does better than me. I'll be real honest. He loves it. And so he planted some basil seeds. And the amazing thing is that now that's the nature, the nature of nature. It's just abundance. We've had basil for 3 years now, and we planted it once.
Right.
Once.
Exactly.
And it's just spreading. And now I'm already saying, oh my gosh, we have so much basil. I have to come up with things I can actually make. So I'm probably going to make basil pesto, because you need so much basil for that. And so you gave me a little bit of courage and confidence, where I was like, okay, I can go to your website and I can download the ebook. I can educate myself. What you explained to us in regards to permaculture and what a food forest is, that my whole body just resonated when you said that. Right. It was like coming home, because we used to be closer to nature, and we do have that desire to return back to natural ways, because we can just intrinsically feel that it's better for us. So you've given me so much hope that I can start with a herb garden. We can then do other things. There's even a watering system because I think that's the mind always goes there, right? The mind is like, it's so much work. I can't do it. I'm tired. I'm this. But I really, really appreciate you. And I just wanted you to repeat your website one more time, and also the name of your podcast.
Perfect. It's my website is 𝗂𝗿𝗯𝗿.org. I do have a free class that people can sign up for at 𝗂𝗿𝗯𝗿water.com. It talks about that watering system that I talked about.
Perfect.
And the third thing you wanted was
the podcast name.
Yes, Urban Farm Podcast.
And what do you talk about on your podcast?
I interview people about their successes and failures and their stories, to empower listeners to, I can really start growing food.
I love that. Yes. So it's a little bit like you have, because I notice it with myself. I feel the desire. My husband and I both feel the desire, but then we get discouraged.
Yeah.
And so listening to your podcast could give us that courage and that nudge, and that hearing other people's stories it's actually very healing to hear. To hear the stories.
Yeah, that is the whole point of the podcast.
Thank you so much. And one last thing before we come to a close, and this is just, what out of your mind and into your heart wisdom would you like to share with us in regards to gardening?
There is this abundance in nature that is mind-blowing. About a decade ago, I started looking at abundance and lack So abundance is one side of the coin, lack is the other side of the coin. And we human beings have this challenge that we think that we're lacking in so many places. And I believe that lack is a social construct that lives between our ears. And when we look at nature, there is so much abundance, just like you mentioned your basil abundance of 3 years.
Mhm.
So I challenge you to, when you get to a place of, oh my gosh, there's not enough, or in any part of your life, think about nature and how nature has this amazing abundance ready for us to pick.
Thank you. That is beautiful wisdom. And thank you so much for educating me and the listeners. And I feel energized now. And I'm like, I can do this. We can do this. We can start.
Nice.
Just start, right? That's the thing. Just start.
Then I did my job today.
Thank you, Greg. It was wonderful
Thank you.
having you.
Thank you for listening to the Soul Health Mentor podcast with 𝗂𝗿𝗄𝗄. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review at Apple Podcasts or wherever podcasts are playing.